Oh, good afternoon, Craig. Good to see you again.
Hey Matt, how's
Uh,
it going?
you're looking good for a guy deep into prep.
I'm glad I'm looking good because I certainly don't feel that way.
It's better to look good than feel good, right? Isn't that
Yeah,
what they say?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's important.
But I think you and I have talked about a few times before about the importance of posing, and I think you brought it up. Now it's getting close to prep time. It's probably a good time to touch on that a little bit. Maybe I can. Maybe I'll set up for you by talking about my experiences with posing and how I've seen it change, perhaps over the
Sure.
decades that
Okay.
I've been involved.
Mm,
And then you can talk into how it's applied to today and how you use it,
Sure thing.
because you're actually deploying, modern posing techniques. So,
Mm,
um, so starting with myself, I guess, I am a child of the '70s. So I did see, a fair amount of Arnold and the guys back in the day. Not so much live, but I saw Pumping Iron when it was close to when it came out. Um, I witnessed Ed Corney, of course. Thought that was amazing.
mhm.
How fluid he was and stuff. Also witnessed Frank Zane. I think in my earlier years of bodybuilding when I was 18, 19, not really big yet. I was trying to show myself in a way that looked good, and I kind of looked at Frank as a way to show myself. I actually kind of got a little bit of ribbing about posing like Frank Zane too much on stage, like
Oh wow.
the king tips and stuff. And
Yeah, yeah.
the head judge told me, "You're not Frank Zane. Do a normal front double biceps." so, but I like that. I like that look, the way that the people who could pose great, with the you know posing like a statue. That's what Frank
Mm,
Zane did. He looked like a Greek statue,
Yeah.
and the fluidity of somebody like Ed Corney.
Mm,
And then in the '80s, very early '90s, we had people like Muhammad Makawi, great
mhm,
poser. We had Bob Paris, also a
mhm.
great poser. Later, we also had, of course, Lee Labrada.
Yeah.
But in that era that I was starting competing, everybody could kind of pose because you had to.
Mhm,
That was important, and everybody seemed to really care about it.
mm,
It was difficult for me because I was never a great poser. I think never mastered it. Frankly, I probably didn't practice enough.
mm,
I was kind of on my own for that, so I just didn't do it enough. I wasn't diligent, but I truly enjoyed and respected it. I thought that it was great to watch the posing routines of the '80s and '90s. I
mm,
mentioned it was on TV back then. And you watch Miss Universe, even the Mr. Olympia on TV, and watching those guys pose was just amazing.
mm.
And then I stepped away from competing for a while. I didn't come back again. I did one show in 1997 in Japan, but didn't come back again until 2018, really.
Mhm,
And that gap, like posing, kind of went away a little bit.
mhm.
I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Mass Monster era kind of deprioritized it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that because,
Yeah,
I think that there was actually a resurgence. So I think Classic Physique came out in 2016. So that
16.
was kind of yeah, I remember because I competed in the first year at it. So, but yeah, that came out and that started to reprioritize posing.
Yeah,
And that was also at the time that Arnold was saying at the Arnold Classic that
was that 16?
guys aren't paying enough attention to posing.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that it got ruined by Ronnie Coleman to put
Okay.
a finger on it.
Yep.
Because I'm very sensitive about this. Like even Dorian, even though he was like the first mass monster,
Mm-hmm.
the times up to that had always been that there had to be some sort of posing routine and
Right.
something of substance, right? And so, he would come with his like, what was it, 2001 music or whatever, 2010, I don't know what it was, but that sort of like monolith type music,
Yeah.
and do his big statuesque type thing, and power and mass you've never seen before, right?
Yeah.
Type of presentation, which was fine. But then I found that when Ronnie was the head, or when Ronnie was the reigning champ, that sort of degraded into just being huge and walking around on stage, hitting most musculars and
Mhm.
like begging for attention from the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't like the when people call to the audience for applause or
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that drives me nuts. Like if you're that good, if you're
Yeah.
that good, you shouldn't have to do that.
That's true.
You
Yeah.
look at the great posers, none of them did that, whether
No.
you're talking the old school or the new era.
Mm.
Right? Anyways, I don't want to start rattling on that. The point is, yes, I agree with the timing that you've
Yeah.
assigned. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, it's a good point you brought it up, because I think, yeah, if I think back, Coleman kind of was and a good example of the lack of the posing was more about hitting specific shots, like roaming and hitting a shot, roam, hit a shot. There was no continuity.
Correct.
There was no, sliding from one move to another that was pre-planned. It was just ad hoc.
Yeah.
The others in the stage didn't do that so much. I think, probably Cutler was a little bit better at that because he came from a slightly different era. And he's a friend of Chris Aceto's, and Aceto was a good poser back in the day too, so kind of had that in him. And, there was others there too. Flex Wheeler was still around. He could pose.
Flex was fantastic. Yeah. Kevin
Leveroni could pose. Yeah. So there was still some happening that was starting to kind of fade out a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe that also was just that general tilt of bodybuilding towards the mass monsters above all else meant that posing was going to fall aside. Yeah. And like you say, when the classic physique came along, it really gave a new opportunity for resurgence, with the shape of the bodies kind of meeting that older era appeal, which does appeal to me. I mean, I understand the mass monster thing, and I've had discussions with people online, like, every bodybuilder wants to be huge. Like, you can't really say that, because some of us do like that aesthetic look,
Some of us can't get there.
Oh, yeah, you can say that too, right? As well, Yeah. And some people, like, maybe they shouldn't even, because I don't want to go on a tangent too much, but you have to push yourself harder to get that big, and it's not always a good thing to push yourself that hard. I'll just say that, So it's good to see Classic come back for the shape and for the posing. And I've hinted on it before, like, although I appreciated posing a lot, I wasn't good at it, never became very good at it, still wasn't good at it when I came back to compete in 18 and 19, because I didn't have a coach. I didn't invest in a posing coach. So I did my best. I did okay, but wasn't great. But I think you, from what I've seen, really, really care about posing. That's one of your top priorities. I see your Instagram. You've got great examples of posing up there. You know how to hit shots from the back really well. I can see, and you're doing everything right. You can transition really well. So tell me a little bit about, like, your passion for posing, like where it came from.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it all came from the fact that I'm small, and knowing that if I was looking for a way to differentiate myself from people that are way bigger than me, that I needed to learn how to pose correctly.
Yeah.
Also, it's very nerve-wracking to be on stage, right?
Yeah.
Especially for the first time. So I knew that my stage presence, and like, I was really nervous about that first show. I didn't want to get laughed off the stage, et cetera, et cetera. So, I went a little bit overboard on the coaching. Well, I didn't go overboard on the coaching. I made sure that, I had proper coaching.
You were well coached.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's, I reached out to the federation that I was going to compete in, and I asked if there was anyone that could help. And I got referred to Beef Sasaki, actually. And so he was my first posing coach, and he was excellent because he was able to explain how to get the different muscles to fire, which is really important, especially when it comes to legs. Like, a lot of guys have difficulty firing their legs correctly to get them to separate, etc.
Yeah.
Especially here in Japan, I find, for some reason. But getting them to separate correctly is really, really important in all shots. And so I learned from him. And then also, by the grace of God, I had a business trip at the time to New York. So then I drove from New York to New Haven to go work with Kenny Wallach, who is probably the best coach that there is out there today, in terms of the number of pro cards that he's helped people achieve, the amount of pros that he coaches, the amount of people that he's mentored, the pros that he's mentored, et cetera, et cetera. So he was really, really, I spent an hour with him, and it wasn't an hour, it was 45 minutes. And in that 45 minutes, I learned more than I ever could have imagined.
What did Kenny teach you that was unexpected compared to what you?
It was just his method of doing it. So, like, he had a posing room in Powerhouse Gym in New Haven, and he had, like, I mean, all the lines and the line and the box and all that kind of stuff was taped on the floor, and from there we did stuff like used a had like a meter stick or a yardstick, I guess, because it was the US, and would measure like how wide you should have your feet placed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then we would take those measurements, and then he's like, when you get home, tape up the floor. And I don't know if you've noticed in my recent check-in pictures that I've got tape on the floor.
I didn't see that. I'm gonna look now, though.
Yeah. So I've got tape on the floor in my house right now. With you know, and then you do stuff like for the various poses, you would hit, you know, you would like align your feet with the tape, and then of course that's all decided by like, you know, how your legs look, how your back looks, etc. And so yeah, so just the sort of methodical approach that he had to it, and also the man's passion for posing is just incredible. Like he's, you know, extremely encouraging, extremely motivational guy, and he is quite frank too. So like if a pose doesn't look good, he's like, nah, I don't like that, hit it this way, right? And then, you know, we'll hit it that way. And he's, you know, he's like an encyclopedia for, you know, different poses and stuff, because he does all different divisions and has done this for years, right? So you know, he's really, really good.
That tuning and selecting a pose, that must be invaluable, because we know you have sometimes less than a minute on stage, right? So you want all your poses to be optimal, the ones you choose that show your body the best. And someone like that's the only way you're going to really know for sure.
Yeah. Well, and especially like even just tweaking the mandatories is really important, and that's where Kenny is really, really good. And that's actually probably where my strength lies as well, is in the ability to listen to Kenny. Basically, I execute the mandatories quite well. So so that's good. Honestly, I feel like my weak point is, and it was funny that you mentioned my transitions and flow is good, because that's actually what I see as my biggest weakness.
Okay.
I'm not really a dancer. I'm not like a particularly creative person. I'm a spreadsheet guy. So, you know, it's a real challenge for me to get up there. And that's what I always try to work on. So like I've actually worked with some, I've reached out to quite a few people to help with that as well, and had the good fortune to work with like some pretty, well, like name brand impressive people. Like, so for, I guess probably the best example of that is Terrence Ruffin. Like Terrence Ruffin is hands down the best poser in modern day bodybuilding. Like Logan Franklin is great as well.
Yeah.
You know, Sean Roden was great. Cedric McMillan was great.
Yeah.
But Terrence Ruffin is just hands down the best poser like I've ever seen. And I recognized that before, like I recognized that in 2016. So I was working with him in like 2017, which is way before he became Arnold Classic champ and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, having the luck to learn from somebody like that was really big. Another one that I was pretty proud of discovering before most people was Rachel Daniels. Her Instagram profile is actually The Real Lois Lane. I don't know if you've
yeah.
A women's physique competitor, and she's an exceptional poser as well.
Yeah.
She comes from a very strong dance background.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that really feeds into her flow and transitions, and because that's something that I don't feel I'm very good at or stand to improve the most from. You know, I actually worked with her for quite a long time.
Really?
Yeah, we had done this thing where we were meeting monthly, and kind of, you know, over an extended period of time, she would give me homework and then I would work on that. So
wow.
Yeah, so yeah, pretty serious.
Yeah.
That said, the stuff like I don't know, like the recommendations that I would have for anybody that's trying to improve their posing is, number one, hire a coach. And to be honest, there's no best coach. There's no right coach and there's no wrong coach, really. There's just different coaches.
Yeah.
And I've worked with or learned from, I will say, because it might have just been like a one-off seminar or something. But if we include like a one-off seminar, there's been Beef Sasaki, Terrence Ruffin, Kenny Wallach, Hide Yamagishi, there is a Canadian IFBB Pro female bodybuilding competitor named Janine Lankowski, Rachel Daniels, Chris Cormier. I think that's it. So that's 7 different people, right? And I've learned something from each and every one of them.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was, you know, like Chris taught me some neat things, Terrence taught me some neat things. Yeah, but I keep going back to Kenny for what it's worth. You know, so you can learn all of these things. You can learn like something from everyone. So it's just important that you get someone that's like, you know, a posing coach that's good. And the way that you can tell they're good is by looking at their clients and looking at them.
Sure.
Because yeah, like some people profess to be posing coaches and don't know a damn thing about it. So yeah, but just, you know, start with them. And then the thing that I would encourage is doing rounds of mandatories in the morning and in the evening. So you do rounds of mandatories, like 2 rounds of mandatories when you wake up, and then 2 rounds of mandatories before you go to bed. And just doing that will help to, because it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
And actually the most important thing that I learned from Janine Lankowski was you have to search for the pain points, meaning when you're posing, it's not supposed to feel comfortable. It's you are trying to display your body the best way you possibly can, and almost by definition, that is not a natural position. So because it's unnatural, things are going to hurt when you're actually hitting the pose correctly. So you have to, when you hit the pose and you're learning from someone, you have to remember what hurts. And then when you hit the pose again on your own, if you're like, oh, well, hang on a second, like my right hip doesn't hurt as much as when I was hitting it correctly. What am I doing wrong? Then you can remember and adjust so that you get that pain back.
That's your breadcrumbs for the correct path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's interesting.
So that's kind of like, that's the main thing. And then in terms of like routines and stuff, unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure, but routines aren't really scored. But you know, that's kind of your time to just, I don't know, connect with that music or whatever that it is that you got, and put on a performance, right? I mean, you know, I always view show day, it's not like you're going in to play a game to win, play a game and you're going to win or lose as a result of your performance on the day. Because winning a bodybuilding show is much more about the 16 weeks prior to the bodybuilding show than the actual show itself. However, you can blow yourself up at a show. So if you don't pose correctly, or if your posing is terrible, then you're doing yourself a disservice. To the 16 weeks that you've been working. And so I always view, as long as you come in shape, have been practicing your posing, and know how to pose, etc., then show day is actually more of a celebration. It's a celebration of the effort that you put in up to this point, and your placing, who really cares? Because the placing is going to be more dependent on who else shows up than what you've actually done, assuming that you've done everything.
That's a good point.
That's the assumption, because I know that every time I'm in prep, I don't eat an extra grain of rice. I, you know, everything that I weigh is either at the weight I'm supposed to eat or 1 gram less. Similarly, in the off season, it's at the weight or 1 gram more. but yeah, it's like, that's the level. I know that, you know, I don't skip cardio. I don't have cheat meals, as in unscheduled cheat meals. Obviously, if they're, you know, if I'm told by my coach to go have one, I will. But, you know, no, like every box is ticked, and I know that I execute with precision. So, knowing that I've done everything that is humanly possible, and then some, then I know that there's no way that I could do anything else on the day that would make me win or lose. Right.
Yeah.
So, well, make me win. Sorry.
Yeah.
Make me lose. Yes.
Yeah. You could definitely make yourself lose. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
You can't make yourself win.
Yeah.
So, and it's just kind of up to the universe at that point. So, that's why, like, trying to focus more on how, like, presenting your body, right?
Yeah.
You've worked your ass off for how many years, for how many months, you know, you've done everything perfectly for so long. You should be proud of where you're at.
Yeah.
Right? Even if the guy beside you is bigger.
Yeah.
That's not on you.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because, like, good for him, right? Congratulations. That's his efforts and what he's done, and who knows what that guy's been through for his life to get up to where he is, right?
Yeah.
You know, but in terms of where you are, it's like, it's a snapshot of where you are now, and you should, like, celebrate that, especially because you're only going to look like that for a few weeks,
right? At best,
you know, at max, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And on that day, if you don't enjoy that, then, you know, that's kind of like the whole point, right?
Yeah.
I love winning, don't get me wrong. Like, I remember a really long time ago, I actually won a show. I remember that was a good feeling. But you know, having been through, having kind of challenged myself more and doing harder shows and stuff like that, and not winning, you know, I've learned that it's really about ticking all the boxes and making sure that you're exactly, you know, can present yourself in the way that you're supposed to be.
Yeah. I think bodybuilding, I mean, it does sound cliche, but I think it's very true. It's one of those sports, quote unquote, where it is all about being the best version of you.
Yep.
Is that you're not, like you say, you're not really competing against somebody else on like a measured field.
Yeah.
There's no finish line to cross or not cross.
Yeah.
And depending on who shows up that day,
mm-hmm.
has a huge bearing on where you place or not, regardless of what your efforts were. You know, so you might as well give everything you can, the best you can that day, which includes your posing, which is something that's often overlooked.
Yep.
And what I've seen people overlook, and I'm probably guilty of this too, is you mentioned finding pain points and doing 2 rounds a day of practicing your mandatories in the morning and the night. Also, just having respect for the endurance it takes.
Oh yeah.
To do that and hold it and breathe properly and not. And while you were dehydrated, probably.
Yeah.
And malnourished.
Hard enough, but not too hard. Right?
Yeah.
So that's one where a lot of guys mess up, is they sit there and they think that if they flex harder, that it's going to make their muscle look harder or something. I don't know what the logic is. Harder, bigger, I'm not sure. But when the muscle's flexed, it's flexed.
Right.
And if you're flexing as hard as you can and shaking like a leaf, you're not going to look good.
Right.
On the other hand, if you're flexing, and actually, so this piece of advice came from Cedric McMillan, piece, when he was at the CJBBF show here in Tokyo, and I was talking to him backstage, and I was like, "What's the one piece of posing advice that you have?" And he said, "Exactly that. Don't flex too hard, because you don't need to. Make sure that you're firing, you're hitting the shot, and then that's enough. Because there's no difference between this," and he showed, you know, where he was, and then he flexed harder, and this, right? Yeah.
No visual distinction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just exhaustion.
Yeah. Well, exhaustion and then shaking and control and all that. So
yeah. And potential of cramping too, which is never fun on stage. So yeah.
Especially dehydrated, right? So
yeah.
So that was, and then also, it's just like that. That's what that really leads to the shaking for most people. Right?
Yeah.
So, you've already got nerves.
Yeah,
you're already nervous, and then add to that, you know, I'm not one of those people that feels at home on the stage at all.
Yeah, nor am I. I fully empathize.
It's an effort. I have to push myself, but that's, you know, yet another aspect that you have to push yourself in bodybuilding, right? So
I knew I wasn't a good poser myself, so I would try to come in either as big as possible or as hard as possible, or ideally both. And try to cover my ass of being a shitty poser. Both of those, frankly speaking, you know.
Well, to be fair, I mean, there's still plenty of guys that win shows in using that strategy.
Yeah.
But for those of us that don't have the possibility of being the biggest in the show, maybe the hardest, but not the biggest. You know, it's just I was actually told it was in my first year of competing. And I can't remember if it was Kyle or Hide. but it was one of the two. They had commented that I look 10 pounds heavier than I am because of the way I pose.
The way you show your physique.
Yeah. And I could stand next to somebody 10 to 15 pounds heavier than me and give them a run.
Yeah.
Because of my posing.
And that's a really good point too. The opposite can happen. Somebody can be bigger and harder, but they pose badly, so they're hiding their body and not showing it well.
Yeah.
So they're knocking themselves down.
Yeah. Well, a really simple example of that is like, when people are doing back double, a lot of guys, for some reason, well, I guess it's maybe because when you look at people on TV, it looks like they're crunching it looks like they're retracting their scapula.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that in the back double. You want to open up as much as possible. So like, if you're contracting your back that way, it doesn't actually show it better because you're supposed to be lean enough that, like just looking at it, you should be able to see all the muscle in the detail. You don't have to flex, your erectors and your, and your traps and stuff, right?
Just making yourself narrower.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Something you don't want to do in a back shot. Yeah, I used to see people do that. Like, I see more of it lately than I did, like, say, 20 years ago. That didn't happen as much. Maybe it's just the way things have changed. And I see people, a lot of guys, like, lean over too much.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Too much.
Like being all shadows.
Yeah. So they have like their ass sticking out, their hamstrings pushed out, and their the head's out way past to their ankles. Bent over like in a C shape.
It's actually a weird one for me too. Is I found that the recent trend there seems to be a recent trend where guys are kind of really arching their lower back so that their glutes pop out, but not contract them.
Yeah,
flex them, right? To try to make their, I don't know, like I don't know the logic, right? Because I'm used to seeing squared off glutes, which is like, when you're contracted and pushing in on them, right? Whereas like I think there are guys out there now that are trying to keep their hips kind of open and then just flex in that position. Almost more like what I think a bikini girl has to do. In bikini posing. And
they don't want to pull it in too much.
Yeah, exactly. Because if a bikini athlete has their glutes squared off, that's not a good look, right? Because they want to look full.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that there's guys that are doing that in classic physique now, and I just like, I don't understand that.
Started that.
Yeah, no, that's I've noticed that it's more. Ramon used to do it. Ramon, the second place classic physique guy.
Okay, yeah.
Brilliant guy. Yeah, he used to do that. Instead of like pulling them in and contracting them, he would like have them out, and it was just a strange look for me.
Some kind of protest against the shredded glutes. I don't know.
Well, I mean, these guys, of course, because they're so lean, it's like not you can see their striations, right? So
anyways, just moving around. Yeah. I think it reminded me about like changes over the ages. One thing that I got wrong when I came back, because I had to sort out, was that at somewhere along the lines, I don't know when it changed, the side chest pose mandatory completely changed in shape.
Oh wow.
So I don't know if you remember like that. I started in the 80s and 90s, and when we did that, we had the waist in, the arms in under the rib cage, and the chest way out, like Schwarzenegger style. But then when I came back, all of a sudden it was like, you kind of crunched over, elbows down, and like kind of squashing into the judge's eyes, and like, when did this happen? I like the old pose better.
That stuff is that's real, okay, and that's like happening. So my back double, which was like my pride and joy, was significantly changed this year. And that was the foot stance. And I always thought that my foot stance was like great, because the style that I was taught was the original ones. And this is from Kenny, right? Like both corrections have been by Kenny. But 10 years ago when I was learning, 8 years ago when I was learning from the first time, it was more of a staggered stance where it'd have the back leg quite bent to show the hamstring, glutes would be contracted fully, the back foot would be spiked to have to show the calf, right? And then your knees pointing slightly outwards so that you get that sort of whatever convex shape when you look at the silhouette.
Yeah, you get kind of an X-frame shape going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then that has been changed this year
Mm.
to him wanting me to stand up a little bit straighter, have my adductors touching, and feet not as staggered, and also not spike the foot.
That's a significant change. And
It's a very significant change. So this pose for me, the foot stance, is much more like what you would have seen in the 80s in terms of the foot positioning.
yeah,
Yeah. So it felt like I was really surprised that that's kind of the trend that's going, because I remember originally on the back double, guys used to keep their legs quite close together and just go directly back. That was sort of the Flex Wheeler era.
yeah.
Jordan Yates,
My era too. I remember it. Yeah,
the legs would be parallel but come
yeah.
straight back, and then that changed to a more sort of almost like karate front stance type of stance.
Yeah.
Now it's gone back actually the other direction, where I would say that it's even more upright than what we would have seen, like
90s.
Flex or a Dorian or whatever do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of a good trend because, if I may be so bold, I think the way some of the poses went were very unflattering of the human body. A lot of very crab-like movements, motions. It just didn't look very good. And maybe it's the flow that's happening because of classic physique. Once bringing back to aesthetics, that's slowly permeating the rest of everything. So it's a good thing,
Possible,
I would see it, frankly.
Yeah. The specific feedback and the reasoning given to me for that is that by keeping my adductors together, I'm able to create a larger mass across my quads, which then helps to accentuate my taper into my waist, because I don't really have much of a waist, as in the bad way. I don't have a waist in terms of being small. I have a waist in terms of it being a straight line down from my shoulder. Right? So, looks like a big block.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I mean, it's great you've had an opportunity to learn so much from so many people and incorporate that into what you do and bring it to the stage, because like you say, like it's like I said, it's about bringing the best version of you on stage, and if the posing can be a shining element, then master it, deliver, be the best you can, and use that to overpower your competitors.
Well, yeah, that's the theory anyways. It has yet to happen.
Well, it's all operating on theory, right?
And then then the whole artistic side of it, I mean, that's just something that, like, to be honest, I need a lot of help, so I usually reach out for help with choreography and stuff like that, because I just that's not something that I'm very good at. And there's one guy here in Japan that's like fantastic at that, a guy by the name of Shoei Nozawa. He's I reached out to him for help this year, but he's like I think a NABA pro. But every time I've seen the guy pose, it's just been amazing, right? He was kind of the opposite of me, which was kind of cool, because I'm good at nailing the mandatories and nailing the poses, whereas he's exceptional at the flow and transition and stuff like that. But he wouldn't hold his poses very long. So, like, when I saw him posing a couple of years ago, I was like, oh wow, like, he's a great poser, but I never get to see what the pose he hits, right? Like, I just wish he would have held that,
too fast.
That lunging back double, like a second longer, right? And then the next year, I don't know, like, I guess he figured that out on his own, but the next year he had it, right? And he just like he would hold that pose for just long enough, enjoy it, right? And then use those syrupy transitions into the next move, and oh man, just like phenomenal posing. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to be learning from him this year.
Yeah, well, that's cool. You're gonna add that artistic touch, because that's, like I said, that's not easy. That kind of something you have, you don't have that kind of artistic sense. It's
I teach
them to be a dancer if it's not in them.
Well, I mean, they always say that, like, artists, like, steal from everyone, like, they steal and put stuff together, and that's how creations are actually made. So I'm trying to remember that, and hopefully, I can learn some stuff from Shoei, and combine that with stuff I learned from Rachel, and combine that with stuff I learned from Chris and Terrence, blah blah blah. So get there someday.
On stage, I will be there watching you to see how well this all comes together, and rooting for you, of course. I look forward to it. It's in your posing routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully I don't blow it. Yeah.
You'll be fine.
To be honest, I was sitting there the 7 weeks out, and I go, "Uh-oh, I haven't even done anything on this yet."
Yeah, this is the time of self-doubt, as you noted before. So yeah, expect it, right? You know,
it's strong. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll all come together, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But this was a really good talk. I enjoyed talking about this because it's something that I don't have a mastery of, but I truly respect. It's really interesting to hear your journey of dealing with so many people, learning from so many people, and incorporating that. I think that's amazing. And really, actually, I have a lot of respect for you for doing that. Actually,
yeah, I still have. It's still a work in progress, but I'll be a student for life in this, just because there's like everything in bodybuilding, everything is so deep when you delve into it that you can just. There's always ways to improve, and there's new things to incorporate and all that, and that's the real joy of it. So
yeah, that's one of the best parts of bodybuilding, isn't it? You can always learn, you can always improve. That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Not bad for a bunch of meatheads throwing weight around. Yeah.
No, it's not like that. Despite how they should depict us in entertainment as being those kind of people, it's not the case at all. Yeah. So most of the bodybuilders I've met, and a slight digression, have been some of the most humble, most mild-mannered, nice people. Actually, the better they are, the more they're like that.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So we should exemplify that as much as we can too, Craig. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just wait till I'm finished dieting, please.
Yeah, be back to be a nice guy.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's wrap this one up, and we'll get our next session going. Again, great talking to you about this, and I hope your practicing goes well tonight. I assume you do a couple rounds, maybe. I was thinking about it.
Yeah,
we talk about it?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks, Matt. It's been good, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Yeah. And everybody, as always, give us a like, subscribe, some comments, hit the buttons. You know what to do, so we know what you want to hear about. Okay. We'll see you all later. I'll see you soon, Craig.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.